Steve Wozniak, who co-founded Apple Computer with Steve Jobs, recently spoke at the University of Arkansas. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Just doing it for fun. And I worked so hard, I kind of crudely designed a computer eventually. And maybe that was the next year I started getting better, trying to redesign it over and over. And I made up a game. And the game was compete with yourself. Try to do a better job designing it than you did before. Go through one iteration of what you've done and say, can I do it better? What are some ideas? And what was better to me was fewer parts. Make it smaller, make it simpler. It's the only thing I could think of. And so I would say if I had 78 chips that equated to a digital equipment computer, can I possibly design it in 76 chips? I'd go through all my chip manuals looking for ways to make things work, do things they weren't even designed to do. Use them in other ways. Whatever it took to get things small, make things reliable and less costly. I got very good at this. I started designing every computer I could get an architecture of, a manual for. Every single one, from Hewlett-Packard, from Data General, from Digital Equipment, from Varian Corporation, lots of them coming out. It was my fun thing to do on a weekend. I got to where I could design any of these computers in 2 days. I'd look at their description, I'd start putting chips on paper, and I got better and better at it. Now, I never thought I'd have a job designing computers. When I came out of high school, I figured I was going to be an engineer. I was going to be designing radios and televisions, the old analog stuff. And that's what engineers did. And the computers were off in some weird places called research. I didn't think they had designers for computers. I didn't think they even were engineers. I didn't know how it worked. But I did it for fun. So that's a more important drive. That'll drive me a lot further. Anyway, I got very good at this, and I could never buy a part to actually build one of my own computer designs. The rewards that are in your own head, the intrinsic rewards, psychologically, are a lot more important than the extrinsic rewards that everyone can see, like how many dots you have and how much money you have. Along came a computer, the Data General Nova. And when I sat down for my weekend to design it, oh my gosh, everything was so clear from the architecture to the parts. It took half as many parts, half as many chips as all my other computers that were equal. It had a very strange architecture. And that taught me a lesson. You want to design the architecture, the overall end of a project, with very good knowledge about the parts you're going to build it out of, and design it to use the least of them. Very often you're in a company, and a company has a project, maybe it's even a construction of a house, and one person will be the architect and design the shape of the house, but a different person chooses the materials to build it with and the methods. And really it's much better when the disciplines are crossed and they're both. I'm telling you, we changed the world from black and white to color, just like Wizard of Oz. And this was such a shock and unexpectedly. Well, we had this money from our investor. So we went down and we hired an agency to basically represent us, present us as a company, the Regis McKenna Agency. And they came up with a bunch of proposed logos. Steve and I liked the one, the apple with the bite out of it, and then we wanted it in 6 colors. So they did 6 colors. And, well, we didn't say 6 colors. They did it in 6 colors. Steve Jobs took it home and he rearranged the colors and put the darker ones at the bottom. So it wasn't pure rainbow order. And that was the story. And the name Apple, they tried to get us to drop the name Apple because it didn't imply computing power. And we said, no, it's for the home. It's for the dentists, it's for the teachers, it's for the people, and Apple's a good phrase for them. The start of the internet was a thing called the ARPANET, sponsored by the United States military. And it only connected about 4 colleges at first, 4 universities, and expanded up. By the time I saw it, it was 8 universities. You could print a list on your teletype, Stanford and Utah and MIT, and you could pick one. And then you could log in as a guest. And you could run programs and see files through a menu system, very slow. Things you had to always print a set of selections, you had to type a letter to make a selection. It was a very slow process over a modem, slow speeds into your phone line. But this was the ARPANET, and I was so thrilled. I thought, this is amazing. This is like Superman stuff. I always love it when I can reach out to the rest of the world, right from my ham radio days. This is Superman stuff. So, of course, I just went home and built up a little device that put words on my television set. I could type on a real keyboard over a modem in my apartment to an MIT computer, and the MIT computer would talk back to my TV. And wow, I was so proud of that, showing it off at work at Hewlett-Packard, and a club started, the Homebrew Computer Club. And in that club, it was almost low-level people, no money people, no rich executives, no big companies, but there were academicians from Stanford and from Berkeley that would come and they would talk social talk about a social revolution of a new form of communication where people could communicate with 100 people within an hour. In terms of today's internet, that sounds pretty small, but it was unbelievable back then. You couldn't phone that many people directly. We could do that with computers, and we could educate better because students would type an answer and get corrected immediately rather than having to wait 24 hours and go to school the next day. And the young person who knew how to program, like me, could go into their company and say, give me your financial data. And I could type and write a program that analyzes the financial data and pops out the answers of what the company should do. And I felt so great. The little guy is more important than the whole big company and their million-dollar computers. The little guy is more important than the CFO. Well, it turns out it takes a technology revolution to cause the social revolutions to happen. And I sat there with my skills, so I converted my little terminal that talked to a computer in MIT. I converted it into a computer of its own, using this little microprocessor chip, a very, very, very weak computer in its day. And I could go down to the club and I could type things in and show programs running. Bill Gates at the same time wrote a computer language called BASIC that became famous for the Intel microprocessors. I wrote a BASIC for my chip. I'd never programmed in BASIC, I'd never studied how to write programming languages. You know what? Some of the best things you do in life are A, because you don't have money and you have to make it small and cheap. And B, because you've never done it before, but you're smart, and you'll go get the pieces together and work it out and write the book yourself that you haven't read. Here is the method to solve this problem. That applies to almost anything, any example in programming. So I got this thing done, and what did I do with this computer that I was able to bring down to the club with my home TV and show off that I'm typing on a computer? What did I do? I passed out the schematics, the designs, and all the code that was in it. I passed them out for free. No copyright notices. I gave it away. I gave it away to all these young people like yourselves so they could help build their own computers and help start this whole revolution going. Steve Jobs came back from Oregon again, where he'd been living up on a farm with the money we got from Breakout. And he saw this. He saw the interest in these new little small computers. And he said, let's start a company. And I don't know if we have anything that will make a profit, you know. And he said, well, yeah, once in our lives, the two of us, best friends, will have a company. Who could turn that down? We didn't have to take any huge risks. We didn't have to give up our jobs. I'd never give up my job at Hewlett-Packard. Matter of fact, I was so loyal to Hewlett-Packard, I had to go to them first to get their permission. They didn't want to do it. I begged Hewlett-Packard to build this device, the personal computer. They turned me down 5 times. 5 times in my own department. I don't understand why. Some of the Hewlett-Packard engineers would come up and watch me playing with my Apple II, and they'd say, this is the finest product I've ever seen. That was the makings of, you know, a huge company called Apple Computer. But, so Hewlett-Packard turned me down legally. And Steve's idea at first was just to build one part that helped people build a computer. One part that we would sell for $40. And then the local store wanted to buy 100 computers at $500 each. That's $50,000. There were no computer stores in the country either. That was $50,000. My salary at Hewlett-Packard was $25,000. This was scary. I went to Hewlett-Packard's legal department to make sure that nobody anywhere in Hewlett-Packard wanted to do this. Because if they did, I would have done it as Hewlett-Packard. I love that company. And so anyway, so now Steve and I kind of had this business that was in the garage. And the way that worked was our computers got built somewhere, we drove them to the garage, we tested them, put them in a box, and then we drove them to the store and we got paid cash. We got the parts on 30 days credit, and we got paid cash. Steve and I were in our young 20s. We had no savings accounts at all. We had no parents or relatives with money that could loan us anything. And we had no business experience. So he just did what we did every step of the way. Steve was largely the businessman. He used the phone in his bedroom. And he would just call everywhere and work out deals to get the credit on the parts and assure them that this guy was going to pay cash for the computers. and he'd find ways to get parts at the right price. He'd call magazines and get publicity. So he was doing all the important business stuff, and I was just the engineer for my electronics skills. So I got a job for a year, oddly enough, programming a computer. While I was there, an executive said he could get me the parts to build one of these computers that he had heard I designed back in high school. I said, wow, okay, he got me the parts, I designed a computer, all my own design. Never ever existed anywhere else. And the description of it, I built it. He got me the parts, I built it. It had all these little switches. You put a switch up for 1 and down for 0. You put in 101100, and it's a number in computer language. You push a button and that number goes into memory somewhere. And you dial in another number, 1100, and you push a button, it goes into memory. And then these little lights light up, looking at memory, and they might say 1100, 1100, whatever it is. And that was kind of cool. I can actually build my own computer. So proud. Wouldn't do anything useful in life, just sort of sit there and be a computer. But it couldn't solve any problems for people. While I was building it, I met Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was younger than I. He was still in high school. And he understood this digital electronics also a bit. Almost back in those days, almost nobody in a high school would understand anything about digital electronics. But Steve did, and he also played a lot of pranks like I had at the high school. So we got along, sizing ourselves up and comparing, our values. Me, I was pretty grounded, with my feet on the floor. I knew who I was. I had such incredible grades and awards and all that stuff that I would always have a job, And Steve was kind of searching. He was one of those people, he kind of wanted importance, but he didn't really know where he stood in the world. He didn't know what life was going to be like for him. You probably know a lot of these people coming out of high school. They just aren't solidly having any talent. They can go out and get a job, but he's looking for anything. One of the things is he always did want money. He wanted to find a source of just a few dollars. And he took jobs, very often selling electronic parts. He would work at a surplus store, and he knew how to buy switches for a penny that he could sell for $10. I thought, oh my gosh, is that unethical? No. They don't know. He didn't want to be an important person because he always spoke from some books that had influenced him, just like I've been influenced by books. He spoke of the great people, the Nobel Prize winners, the ones that changed the world, the Einsteins that have different thinking and take us to different places, and Isaac Newtons. So he really wanted to be one of those people, but to find his way to get there. Who knows? He never really thought of himself as a company executive type person somewhere in life. But remember, everything you learn in school, you probably won't ever apply in your business life. The methods you used to study, to learn to solve the problems, going through long processes to achieve goals, that is what you really carry the most from school. And obviously you can get schooled a lot of different ways, and they aren't necessarily right in a formal academic school. I asked my father, why is he an engineer? What do engineers do? Well, they make nice new things like washing machines. And before washing machines, our great-grandparents had to wash clothes with their own hands. Oh my God, I thought this was horrible. They probably never thought of it that way. They probably enjoyed doing it. But I thought, wow, I want to be a part of this, creating a better world. My dad said, if we create all these great new things in the home, people will have to work less. They'll have it done for them. They'll have an easy time, and someday we'll only have to work 4 days a week. Now, I'm looking back, and in Silicon Valley, it takes 2 people in the family working full-time at stressful jobs just to own a home. So somehow, we were successful in developing all this stuff, but we sure didn't get our 4-day work week. Somebody